Hey, so today I have the honor of having my very first mentor and coach, Alan Kay, on my YouTube channel. When I was in my early 20s, Alan, you sort of took me under your wings and helped me navigate the scary world of employment, especially in advertising, which was, yeah, it was really cool. You helped me really get my foot into the door, and I'm grateful for that. And I remember back then watching you on your YouTube channel interviewing other experts. Today, you are here on my channel and you're the one being interviewed, and it's a very sweet moment for me.
Okay.
So, where are we coming from today? Recently, I've been posting some content about our relationships with our mothers, and especially talking about the concept, well, the fact that there are some mothers who just can't love. And this has gotten a lot of people worked up. I've received some angry messages from total strangers challenging me on this, and I've received messages from friends asking me to explain more. And you were the only person who reached out to me in response who seemed to understand what I was talking about.
Mm.
So tell me, what is your experience with mothers who can't love?
Um, Quite a lot. Interestingly, I'm sorry to say it's got a one side of the world issue, India, China, etc., where a lot of mothers have lived with being second class in the family to the husband, and have acquired this habit of bullying their children, to being difficult mothers. And I think that's perfectly normal. How do we help them? And so I've got this document that I prepared, and I'll share it with you later, dealing with persistently difficult and obstructive people, creating micro change. What I want to emphasize about it is we're trying to help them by being firm ourselves. So let me just go through that. Do you mind if I just go ahead now?
And yeah, my next question was going to be, what can we do about it? So it seems like this document addresses that directly. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, and I've used it for quite a few years. It's from a specific book, Fierce Conversations, um, and you'll find in the document itself some of the notions. Um, Let me give you that quote at the top there. I learned long ago, never wrestle with a pig. You get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it. Now, that's a bit strong, but it's not far from the truth often. So, what we want to do is consider difficult, obstructive people cannot change their behavior in the moment. That's the big one. They can't change no matter what we do. So, we have to acknowledge that. It's their problem, however, not ours. And that's a big one. We've got to stop taking on their problems by arguing back with them. Since they can easily modify their view in the short term, it's our behavior that changes. I can't emphasize that enough. Our behavior that changes. Instead of merely reacting to a provocation, we decide how to respond purposefully. We slow down to the micro change mode to speed up change later. And then it's a framework for establishing accountability for change. Again, our accountability for change. And it's not about being strong and, they'll come round. It's not that at all. It's us coming round to help them come around. So, Rito, so far, has that made sense to you?
Yes, in terms of, I mean, this quote that you shared, don't wrestle with a pig. You shared this with me many years ago, and I found it so funny and so true.
Yeah,
But I haven't always been able to practice it. Um,
right.
but what you said about not trying to change them, because that absolutely isn't going to work, but helping them to change through what we do and how we react. This
Yep.
absolutely applies to me. In a way, I have given up the idea of trying to change them, especially when we're dealing with this problem that my generation is facing. We are trying to create our own identity in the face of really, really overbearing mothers or over successful mothers or over mothers who have real grand ideas about how our lives should have gone, mothers who have incredible successes, a career, financial, whatever, and are trying to I don't know, we're constantly feeling judged that we're not as rich or as successful as them, and so on and so forth. We're dealing with people who are 30 to 40 to 50 years older than us, and it's just not possible for us to change them. I
Yep.
personally have kind of given up on trying to change them. However, that being said, the moment that I'm able to just accept that and try to bring the change onto me, that instantly has had an effect on my communication with that generation of women. And this is not just
Yep.
my mother, but it's many other women in that generation that have recently experienced this change with this phenomenon with, because this has very recently come into my awareness. And some of actually the biggest thing that has helped is the whole boundaries conversation.
Yeah.
For me, so far, one conversation had to be a very open, vocal, angry conversation with one person, and with another person, it was almost a silent conversation. It was cutting back on the conversation, cutting back on accepting words like blah, 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 and also cutting back on me giving information. So that was a huge change that I also made. So I know the power of what you're about to say in terms of taking that change, the responsibility of that change onto ourselves instead of trying to change somebody who's 30, 40, 50 years older than us. It's like wrestling with a pig.
And sometimes it's even more complicated because, having practiced this with a number of people, interestingly, guys, a few times, where they've either got a wife with a daughter who causes lots of problems, and the mother, the wife, doesn't know how to deal with it. So the other parent has to put emphasis on his wife to get the daughter to change. Because if he tries to change the daughter, it's a lot harder if the mother doesn't change. That's just to illustrate the point. The one thing I want to say is this is all done with love. At the worst times in the relationships we have with people, particularly some examples recently, again, mothers, I've said to the individual, stop, tell your mother you love her, and then carry on with your position. So the next line is never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig. It's somewhat similar to the first one. So in an organizational sense, and we can do it in an organizational sense, micro change in the moment, empathy, it must be hard or difficult when you talk about the behavior. And I'm thinking organizational, maybe a group of people or an individual. And what we're trying to do is get them to hear what the issue is. So state their inappropriate, unhelpful behavior. When you do X, it obstructs, positions the situation this way. And then state the impact it has on you and your team and work. It blocks us from, and you talk about it. And then you state what you need. I need you to, or it would be helpful if you want to be more purposeful, to restate your request in a way that works for both of us so that we can make a decision. What's really important right now in this piece here is it does not happen overnight. We probably have to say this 2 or 3 times to the difficult people who are themselves having trouble. They're not going to admit it, but they're having trouble in their new role where they've got more power than they had before or whatever. We need to help them get there. And I say this to quite a few of the men who have issues with their mother. Please keep telling your mother you love her. Do not let her talk after that. That's not the point. It's keep reminding them. So take them seriously, as it says down here. They mean it, but not literally. Don't re-engage in their argument. Don't invite their input. Go back to the agenda, repeat the framework as necessary. We're helping them by not responding to their often negative or unhelpful comments or complaints. We do not respond to them. We carry on into a future conversation. And so there is a book called Fierce Conversations. It's a useful toolbox that helps clear the mind when somebody obstructs and intimidates those around them. It is not it's not criminal what they're doing. It's what they've learned to do, whether it's male or female, but it's particularly prevalent with ladies, mothers. So you'll find on page 2, when you get this, some more stuff from that book, Fierce Conversations.
Okay.
Any comments about that so far, Ritu?
Yes, yeah. I have practiced some of this recently.
Yeah.
And one thing that I have to add is that when the other person is also a very fierce person, and there's a reason that you're being forced to have a fierce conversation because you're dealing with a fierce person.
Yeah.
And when one is in such a situation, that person's going to talk back. That person's going to defend themselves by attacking you. And in these situations, of course, it's important to practice, as they say, non-defensive communication. So okay, don't try to defend yourself from their counterattack. But in this, what has helped me is that saying, okay, you're allowed to think that way. You're allowed to think that I'm coming at you with this complaint because of my cultural background, or I'm coming at you with this complaint because of my misconception, or I wasn't there, so I don't know what really happened, or whatever. For me, what the next step that I would add is, because you're dealing with somebody who is highly opinionated, quite fierce in the way they have conversations, the way they talk to you, you say, yes, you're allowed to be that way. You're allowed to think that, but that doesn't change what I am saying. That doesn't change what I'm allowed to think and what I'm in fact thinking and believing and witnessing. And now I'm telling you that this is no longer okay with me.
And they need to see, by your almost rigid response, i.e. not responding to them, that you have changed. Again, it might take them 2 or 3 sessions to notice that you've changed. And again, if you throw in mother or whatever, I love you, don't worry about it. Even though they're being fierce, it's our job is to slowly calm them down. Using the solution-focused way of looking at things, it's the same point, though. You're being very clear about what needs to change. So you can use empathy. It must be difficult. And that's what the love piece is. And whether we call it love or whatever, I really like the way you do such and such. So it must be very hard and difficult for you to, when you have to, you name the behavior, state there sometimes inappropriate behavior. Occasionally, mother, that works. However, I've noticed that you were supportive when you helped them notice that they don't need to be that way all the time. And state the impact it has on you and the team, if that's necessary, or the family. That's helpful in your process. It helps us, blah, blah, blah. You're building on purposeful stuff, not positive. That's too old. And then state what you need them to do instead. You do not give up going on about what needs to change. I need you to, plus, how would you see that being useful to the team or to your family or whatever? Restate your request in a way that works for both parties. Get them started thinking about how, when they change, it will be helpful.
No, that nails it. Experience that I've had is exactly, I need you to, period. And this is absolutely non-negotiable. So at this point, I really came to a point where the change in me was so drastic that the other person could not take it seriously because I was taking myself seriously. I would say that was the biggest change in this whole story, that came to a point where I took myself seriously and I valued, okay, so this is what actually resulted in the change to stick this time around. Suddenly, gaining that person's approval and love and support was less important than sticking to my values.
In order to get them to change their behavior.
Yeah, it was in order to get them to change their behavior. So in my situation, my experience, I haven't needed them to change their behavior so much.
I get it.
I'm in a privileged position where I could just end that interaction in this way. I could remove myself from the picture completely, or at least partially. So that sent a very clear message, and that helped me a lot. But I can imagine if this was a bit more integrated situation where it wasn't possible for me to step back and remove myself in such a big way, then I would have needed that person to change. And in that case, I would have to come back and I can imagine needing to have such conversations again and again and again.
Yep.
But then how do you not give up? How do you not just get so frustrated and just want to strangle them because they're just not getting through? The message is not getting through.
Well, that's a whole other thing. My advice to people is to be very demonstrative about what you're going to do. I can't talk about this one in any detail, but an individual whose wife had a son from a previous marriage. The son was violent, abusive, and came round to her house, the couple's house. They were an older couple, frequently. And then one occasion, the violent son, went after the husband, who happens to be a friend of mine. And I said, the only issue you've got here is how quickly you can get out of that relationship. Now, do you actually want him to get, he's got to change his behavior? Do you want him to leave the wife? No. You want him to present the story to the wife that if it doesn't get better, that's what's going to happen. And what happened was the wife sent the son away. She cleaned up he had his own place. She cleaned it up and made a rule. You can only come round 1 day a week, and that's only in the evening, because he was used to coming for weeks and sleeping on the couch, etc. Because the mother, that was her son. She knew it was annoying, but she couldn't change things. So I don't know if that fully answers your point, but it's a pretty dramatic statement about what you will do in order to change things.
That's a very powerful example you shared. I'll very, very quickly share an example that reminded me of that. It's from the book I Forgot to Die by an author named Khalid Rafiki, something like that. He's an ex heroin addict, and he finally cleaned up when his mother stopped sending him money to go, get high on heroin. And the mother finally disowned him in a way, saying that, no, I will no longer support this. And that she finally did that drastic thing that you just said.
Yeah.
And as you said, that boundary or that line that you draw, that ultimately helps that person to really change, if change is possible for them at all or not.
What I'd like to say about those types of people, not the mothers, but the sons, daughters, or whatever, there isn't much room in society for them. You could put them in prison, you could put them in a mental home, you could put them in a restricted access place. There's not enough of that. They have to find out for themselves what works by the dependency on the mother or whomever being taken away. And it quite often works. Let me give you another example here. It's from the world of Al-Anon and the Alcoholics Anonymous, the friends and family of the alcoholic or the drug addict. And this is the last way to look at it. It's an even less formal personal sense. Consider the approach taken by Al-Anon to help friends and families of alcoholics practice the 12 steps, namely by welcoming them and giving them comfort to families of alcoholics, and by giving them understanding and encouragement to the alcoholic that the family support member has to create boundaries. The family support member has to create boundaries. That's what we've been talking about all the way through it. And that's what the issue is, helping people whose behavior isn't very good because their relatives aren't very good. So it's creating boundaries. And it's the same if it's our own relative that's directly impacting us, we're creating boundaries in order to support the addicted person. We're not there to punish them. We're there to support them. That's back to that mother, I love you, or mother, I appreciate how you blah, blah, blah. It just, for those that get your hands on it, there's some stuff here there's a link to Fierce Conversations and some of the key principles. It's all the same thing. It's about us changing our behavior in order to help people change their behavior.
How can people get a copy of this document?
Yep. I've already sent it to you.
Okay. So would it be okay for me to share this with
Yeah, thank you. Let me make this point to the folks who do get it. Is I lean heavily on the Fierce Conversations book. I don't credit them enough, but you can find it anywhere. And one friend of mine, he went from London, England, to California or somewhere to take the course, and it was very powerful. So it's well worth looking further into the Fierce Conversations. I emphasize again, it's not about punishment. It's fierce conversations to help them make progress and help yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a really good summary. I will definitely share your information, your website, your books, and so on in wherever this video is going to be posted. And again, thank you for all your support to me over the decades, almost coming up to 20 years now. It's just crazy. But yeah, thank you. And I am so honored to have you with me here today talking about this very relevant topic.
It has been a pleasure for me to be helpful.